Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the vCD RoundTable. Today we have another technical topic, and we want to actually share with you some of the, I would say mystery insights. Is it really a mystery insight? Not 100% sure. But what you can actually do with a vApp and why we still think the age of the vApp is not gone yet, where some people say the VM is actually the primary thing to move forward. I would still say there are good reasons to use a vApp still. We still use that, for example, for lab kits and others because it just makes it a lot easier. But before we go into the details of the advantages and miracles around the vApp, let's do a quick round of introduction, throwing the ball over to Matthias.
Yeah, this is Matthias. Looking forward to talking about vApps tonight. Sasha.
Yeah, my name is Sasha, and happy to be here in this round. Toby.
Yeah, also hello and welcome from my side. Also happy talking about the mystery about the vApp.
And Sasha is happy he's here because he wants to learn something. No, so the vApp, as Eve started, because a bit of I came up with the topic. So what I see a lot out there, if you talk with CSPs, and especially about customers of the CSPs, are questions around how can I distribute ready-to-run services, because a virtual machine cannot be placed into a catalog. And of course, how can I manage a group of virtual machines as a single instance? And what additional features and configuration options is a vApp providing? And what I've figured out is that many people out there have no idea how a vApp works, what it does, what the advantages are, and what someone should take care of if we use vApps in Cloud Director to distribute services and manage groups of virtual machines. And as Eve mentioned, we're hosting lab kits for trainings, and therefore a vApp is a perfect mechanism to firstly deploy whole infrastructures for testing purposes and also secure those smaller groups of virtual machines in terms of the whole remaining infrastructure. So that's what we are going to talk about today. Anything I missed? Maybe yes. Maybe not.
Yeah, maybe networking then a little bit, but this is part of the vApp.
Exactly. So the vApp, first and foremost, a single virtual machine in Cloud Director, and I think that's very interesting. So with which version of vCD the VM as a first-class citizen showed up? I don't know. Was it 9 something, 10 something? I can't remember.
I think in the HTML5 user interface was kind of useful. I'm pretty sure it wasn't there in the Flash UI, so it must be 9, 7, or 10.
Okay, yeah, sounds reasonable to me. And being really honest, even if you create a virtual machine as a first-class citizen in Cloud Director, it's still a vApp. It's a hidden vApp, because a virtual machine itself is a bit different. And you can always convert a single virtual machine into a vApp. And the interesting part is if you add a single virtual machine into a catalog, it implicitly converts it into a vApp. So I think that's the first shocking moment. I saw that in a project, I think last year or 2 years ago, because the CSP just called me and said, Matthias, I added a virtual machine to a catalog, and if I deploy, I have a vApp. What am I doing wrong? I said, nothing. That's how it works. So what is a vApp? Let's start at the basics. A vApp is, I would say, an additional management layer to cover additional configurations of one or multiple virtual machines, including additional networking, as Toby already mentioned. Additional networking is something like also services, like firewalling for the group of virtual machines, NAT rules for the group of virtual machines, and also permissions. So you can share a vApp. So we have so many topics to cover. Where are we going to start? Okay, I start. I start, let's say, with a group of virtual machines. So I think we're all aware a service in many cases consists of maybe 2 or even multiple virtual machines, which are dependent of each other. If we go back to a lab kit, and we could also treat this as a testing environment configuration, because companies also use additional configurations to test software, because they need the exact same infrastructure over and over and over to deploy an application, to test, or for developers, right? So they develop some code and you need to deploy a new testing environment. So that's basically a lab kit. So lab kit is more a generic term. And within a lab kit or a testing environment, you have virtual machines which are dependent of each other. Maybe let's start with a very simple approach like a domain controller. So we have authentication and DNS as a starting point, and then we might have some additional dependent virtual machines on DNS. So with management of multiple virtual machines, I could start with a vApp provides a start and stop order configuration. So we configure which virtual machine starts first and what is the behavior of the starting process. So do we wait for a certain time? Are we waiting for VMware tools to be ready in a virtual machine before we continue to fulfill all the dependency needs a whole lab kit has, or a testing environment has, to boot successful? Because we are aware of, if maybe, let's do the really straightforward example, because if DNS is not working, many services just refuse to start, even Cloud Director. Or let's do some VMware-based example, like a vCenter server. I've ever tried to boot a vCenter without DNS, so it's not starting. So we have dependencies, and that's something which can be managed using a vApp.
The only thing I would like to add here is there are also pitfalls.
It's always DNS. No, but please, Toby, yeah, go ahead. Be my guest.
Because there is really, as you already mentioned, the beauty of the vApp is you get the possibility to do a startup and also a shutdown order. We can do it in both directions. So we can do it in the starting phase, but also in the powering off phase. But the pitfall on one hand is AJ is not respecting the vApp at the end.
Oh, that's a very good one. Thank you.
So if you have really well configured everything in your vCD environment, and then still, it happens from time to time, we have seen it a couple of days ago, that then host going offline, and you have some of your VMs are running on, some of your VMs which are based off the vApp are running on this host, they then get started not in any kind of order or not any kind of restart mechanism is there. They are just restarted by AJ. So this is something we need to be aware, or you need to be aware. It is only as long as Cloud Director cares about the stuff. Assume if any other solution like vCenter AJ kicks in.
Yeah. Oh, that's a very good catch. And as you speak, it just pops up in my mind. We should mention a Cloud Director vApp is not related to a vCenter vApp. Oh, just say. So if you create a vApp in Cloud Director, it's not implicitly creating a vApp in the vCenter. No. So the vCenter is not aware of the whole vApp concept in Cloud Director. And that just popped up, Toby, because you are so right with the HA thing. Yes. And the second pitfall is if you add a new virtual machine, a vApp has a very unique default behavior. Because the shutdown or the power off action is power off and not shutdown of the virtual machine. So that needs to be changed for every single object manually or by the API. Yeah, true. That's really good.
And on the other side, you can basically export both as an OVF. And the file format is actually pretty similar. Or an OVF. So you can actually take in Cloud Director, if you ever need to get rid of, or if you want to move a vApp or something like that, you can actually do a complete OVF export. The main difference between that one in the Cloud Director and in vSphere is that the Cloud Director one will take all the configuration around network, storage profiles, and all of that with it, whereas the vCenter one will just be a bundle of virtual machines and nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also, you can take that bundle vApp from vCenter and actually import that into Cloud Director, but it does not work the other way around. An OVA export for vApp from Cloud Director cannot be re-imported into the vCenter.
That's true. And also speaking about power controls, the vApp in Cloud Director has power controls because with the power controls of the vApp, you initiate the start and stop behavior of the vApp. In the past, it was a bit like you need to think how it works in Cloud Director because you clicked shut down, but shut down was a power off because you followed the vApp starting order. So you need to be careful. They changed the naming again. So with the current versions of Cloud Director, you have start, stop, and power off. So that's very simple. Start, power on, and follow the startup order configured. Stop. Please execute the stop order in the vApp, and then it shuts down the vApp. And power off is Nomen est omen. It's a power off of everything immediately. There's also the ability to use stop, force, stop, which is the same. Power off everything immediately.
And you need to power off the vApp, not only the virtual machines, because still the vApp is running. This is also something you should have in mind. When you go with vApps, you still have the possibility to power off single VMs, but still your vApp is running and consumes maybe some additional services. Was more related in the past with NSXV, not with NSXT nowadays, or with NSX nowadays. But in the past, it was something you should have in mind.
Just tell us which services.
Yeah, the Edge Service Gateway, for example, in the good old days.
And the networks are there.
And the network.
Networks. And maybe let's start with networks or continue with networks because we now covered the power actions and start and stop orders. So vApps have their own networking configuration, and that's very powerful. So from a language perspective, we differentiate between 3 types of networks in Cloud Director. First, we have external. Secondly, we have OVDC networks. And the third type I'm referring to are what we call a vApp network. So a vApp network itself has 3 types. It could be direct connect, routed, or isolated. So we're back with the same naming conventions as we use for OVDC networks. So I think there is no need to cover an isolated vApp network. But the beauty, maybe we just add 1 sentence to the isolated vApp network. An isolated vApp network is local to a vApp. If you deploy the same vApp twice and each contains an isolated vApp network with the same name, it's still local to each of the vApps. So a virtual machine cannot communicate outside of the vApp using this isolated network. Toby, any thoughts about routed vApp networks?
You get it. You have your tier 1 gateway.
Oh, very interesting.
There is a fancy stuff happening in the background.
Don't say fencing. That's something different. No.
Yeah, fencing is fancy, not fencing. Fancy. No. Routed behavior, you have the connection to your tier 1 gateway. You can utilize services like NAT, port forwarding for inbound and outbound stuff. It needs to be configured, to be honest. It is not there automatic. It is not there automatically. You need to configure everything. There has been some change with the default firewall rule set, but normally it was a default block all rule. Could be in the next couple of days that maybe there are default allow rules there.
Ew.
I've heard something.
Stop hearing voices.
Yeah, that's it from a routed perspective, more or less. From my perspective.
We should be a bit more precisely, Toby, because the vApp edge, and now I set the name, is a dedicated edge. It's not related to the edge gateway, which exists in most cases, let's be honest, in most cases for an organization, or being, again, more precisely for an OVDC. So the vApp edge is a second T1. It's not the same.
On
So
a
I think
dedicated
they're connected using a service interface or something.
on a dedicated edge cluster. To be honest, this is also something which we should have in mind. It must be a dedicated edge cluster.
You could place it on the other one. You can place it on the edge cluster. I think what you're referring to is you need to configure the edge cluster in the OVDC, which is used to place the edge gateways on.
Yeah, sorry. It must additional configuration. Yeah. That's
Exactly. You already mentioned that. That's very important again, because out of the box, even if you have connected Cloud Director to NSX, you have provider gateways, edge gateways, everything's configured, dynamic routing, whatever. It's not related to a vApp edge. So, and that's so true, and that's very very well hidden property.
Absolutely. That's also because you just mentioned before the isolated network, and maybe there is also some concern about the isolated network, because do I still have any kind of possibility to utilize DHCP services, for example? And yes, it is true. You can utilize DHCP on an isolated network as well, because the isolated network as still as in fully isolated is still connected to the vApp edge. That's the most important part.
Yep. So these services are provided by the vApp edge. Yeah. So I just looked it up. So the edge cluster needs to be configured on the OVDC object in the system context. So if you want to use vApp edges, please go to System as a sysadmin, grab the OVDC, so the Organization Virtual Data Center, hop into the configuration. So by just click on the name and navigate to Networking Edge Clusters. And there is an entry which is called Edge Cluster and the name, and that is by default, it's empty, not configured, whatever. It's empty. And you just need to change the value to the edge cluster, which you would like to use to deploy vApp edges to. Yeah, that's a nice one. So that's routing. The third option we have is a direct connect vApp network. Direct connect vApp network is configured by the organization admin and connects to an OVDC network. So in the end, if you add a new virtual machine to the vApp and connect it to the vApp network, which is direct connect to OVDC network, you connect the virtual machine to the OVDC network. Yeah, that's the third option we have. Pretty cool. Also for vApps, that's new in 10.5 in the UI. If you deploy a vApp and you have vApp networks, during the deployment for each of the source networks, you can choose to which destination network or which destination network should be used. for the vApp network, or you just leave it with please keep the vApp networks, and that works perfectly fine if you have a vApp edge in front of it. So the vApp edge also enables us to create or build an implicit fencing if you prefer to deploy the exact same environment over and over and over. And now we're back with the software testing use cases to have the exact same environment to test software releases. And you just click on fencing in Cloud Director, but I still have no idea what that does. Right.
Fencing in Cloud Director is a completely different beast because it is built for software development. It's if you would have ever been in the generation of Lab Manager, then you would know that.
So now we're back to my statement. Because I always say Eve started designing Cloud Director in 1834.
Something like that. Now, the point is the whole concept behind the fencing is that you can take an application as it is, including its MAC addresses, IP addresses, and everything else, and actually basically reset it on the network as a secondary one. So what's going to happen is inside the vApp, the application is still seeing its same IP addresses, MAC addresses, etc. But from the outside, you can basically address it from a different address. It sounds a bit like nothing, but it would also work with things which are not TCP, IP, or UDP. So it's really working on layer 2 because it goes down to the MAC addresses. However, it's also it has its challenges because it's when you go to the outside, it actually seems license activation and all of that shouldn't be affected by it. All should be great. But it has a lot of other implications because it does one-on-one nuts for each IP address and MAC address. So whereas when you think about what we do for lab kits, where you have one external address for the vApp, in that specific scenario, every virtual machine gets a virtual external address. The other thing is for a fenced network, the expectation is that the outside network from a CIDR is exactly the same as the inside network. So you're basically you're taking an existing vApp which is directly connected or something like that, fence it and actually put it out again as the fenced one. So, and now the edge gateway has to basically do all the MAC and IP address translation inbound and outbound, and also make sure that if something happens on the inside, it's not going to go completely crazy. To be honest, I have seen it working properly. I always had challenges to ever get it really working the way it should work by myself. And it's one of these rare corner cases, but I'm pretty sure because they never got rid of it, that there somewhere is a very large customer massively utilizing that. Because they must have ported that from NSXV to T on top of it, because it's still there with T now.
Yeah, but in T, to be honest, it was there out of the box more or less, because the whole stateful nut was there in NSX from the beginning. And I guess, to be honest, not a large customer, but I know one customer who comes from Lab Manager and is utilizing fencing also still nowadays in Cloud Director.
So Toby is also old.
Yes.
Look at his haircut.
I have played around with Lab Manager multiple years.
All right, so we covered all those networking options, and we're mainly dealing with an implicit fencing. So we configure a NAT on the vApp edge to have the same environment over and over and over deployed. Could also be used to deploy a few ESXi hosts in virtual machines to test some infrastructure-related features. So the vApp itself, so we now covered virtual machines, and you can add and delete virtual machines. You can create a template out of it, store it in a catalog, and deploy it over and over and over and over. But the vApp object itself has some additional options, like you could create a snapshot. Oh, so you do a backup? Oh, no. So you create snapshots are not backup. So you can create a snapshot, but what happens in the back end? So Cloud Director just creates a snapshot of each virtual machine being a member of the vApp, but those snapshots are not in sync from a timely perspective. So the snapshots are created in a serial fashion. So please do not consider like, oh, I create a snapshot on the vApp and all the virtual machine snapshots are at the same exact point in time, because that's not going to happen.
Plus, it's only one. If any of these machines has already a snapshot, then that snapshot will be bye-bye, gone.
Yeah, or refusing to create another one.
No, normally it will just remove the old one and put a new one in.
Nice. So
they changed that. I think in the early days of Cloud Director, when they first introduced snapshots for Cloud Director, it was actually declining a snapshot if there was an existing one. And at one point in time, someone found it a really clever idea to change that behavior and change it in a way so that it always will work. And so even if it has 10 snapshots from vSphere, they are gone.
Consistent.
Not consistent.
So that's a very interesting one. You can change the owner. So in a multi-tenant environment and having multiple people inside a single organization working with virtual machines, networks, and all the other types of objects, every object has an owner, even the vApp. So you can transfer a vApp from one owner to another, so to the responsible person. And really cool, you can share a vApp. So you can share and enable other people accessing, with the role, of course, the same vApp again. Like, is it a read-only, read-write, or full control? So these are the three options we have. Or we share a vApp with an organization. So the same sharing mechanism, which is available for example, catalogs, is available for vApps as well on top. And if you have vCDA as part of the game, vCDA, yes sir, vCDA gets added to the context menu of the vApp. So you just click a vApp, go to availability, and replicate, migrate, whatever, to another organization, another vCD instance, whatever, the whole vApp. So that's also a pretty cool mechanism for disaster scenarios. And you can replicate, or you use vCDA to replicate the whole vApp to another site. Last but not least, a very beloved feature of the vApp is it has its own lease time. So that's the trailing or the dependent mystery of disappearing virtual machines. Be careful with vApp lease times. If you shut down a vApp and you are not taking care of the individual lease time, which is configured by default, and he's like, yeah, I shut it down because I want to save on resources and I will come back to my vApp in 40, 50 days. You can come back to your vApp by restoring it from the backup. So that's another very interesting history.
Talking about the restore, there is something I would like to add, because this is also something which is very helpful and nice, to be honest, that is also there on the vApp, is the metadata information. Because you can utilize metadata information for automating your jobs, whatever kind of backup vendor, depends if he really is capable of getting out the information from vCD. But if you have a backup vendor which is capable of reading out the information from vCD. You can utilize the metadata information for automatic backups and stuff like this. So this is also something which is quite handy on the vApp as well.
No, it's really great, and you can use metadata, for example, for ARIA Operations Manager for the whole billing game. You add metadata, and based on metadata, you can steer the billing system. Check like, yeah, because it's a vApp, we need to charge another $5 a month or whatever. That's also part of the game. Nice. I think that covered a lot around vApps.
And you get a nice looking, because I'm just have a look into the console, you get a nice looking network diagram. That's the most important part of the VM, to be honest.
And in the summary view, if you click on the console link, you get all virtual machine consoles. You can select one of it. Yeah, speaking of consoles, please add a proper certificate, otherwise the console is not working still.
That's not true. That's fake news.
But it creates documentation by itself with the network diagram. That is much more than most people have about their applications. So from that perspective, it's a huge step forward.
Yeah, but I do not care about this one because good code always documents itself.
Yes.
But
I didn't see I write good code.
Matthias starts using Docker, so not Docker, GitHub.
No, fake news, fake news.
Matthias is start using GitHub, so he's
Fake news. No. That's not true. That's fake news.
If you would have now told me that he's using GitHub in combination with Copilot, then I would be completely shocked.
I even can't spell.
Copilot would simply jump in and actually tell him how to optimize his code.
No, it documents my code. All right. So, or is this joking? Sasha, anything to add about vApps?
No, I think you covered all. So
Thank you. What did you learn today?
yeah, I heard nearly all of it before. So nothing new, but it becomes more and more important to talk more about this. Let's call it more or less basics for the daily use. So give an idea to every service provider what can be used with Cloud Director, what are the options with Cloud Director, because what we saw the last weeks and months is a lot is that many of the service provider currently don't use Cloud Director, only have the complete environments in vSphere and struggling with multi-tenancy and how to get access for the customers. And so I think it becomes more and more important to talk more about this. For us, it's basics to show what's possible and bring the service provider to a level to say, hey, let's take a look at Cloud Director. Let's start with this complete multi-tenancy. Let's start with vApps, though, get a better overview, get permissions per customer, though, that not my complete administrators have access to all of my customers. In most cases, that makes no sense, especially if I started as a bigger service provider with 100, 200 customers.
Good one, yeah. I think we covered most of the aspects around vApps.
I think there's one which we didn't cover, but I'm not sure. I might stay corrected for that because I didn't play enough with 10.5 yet if that behavior has changed. But as of 10.4, vApp is the only thing you can actually add to a catalog.
That's what I said 30 minutes ago.
We are not
Just
even.
saying. No, just saying. But you're right.
As always, I don't listen to you.
That's true. All right, guys. So some famous. So I kept talking for a long time. So guys, some famous last words.
not from my side.
Remove the vApp, back to the vApp.
Yes, sir. And
Mhm.
just to provide a very short outlook for episode 29, because Sasha, because of his statement, I have a very great idea. How to move current multi-tenant treated vCenter environments with Cloud Director to even multi-tenant vCenter access using Cloud Director proxies and stuff like this. So we could
Stuff
cover
like this.
this one in episode 29.
And then I would say 29 will be about multi-tenancy.
Exactly, multi-tenancy. So the
Whoever actually
right
has
future
taken
of
the
multi-tenancy.
Yeah, so whoever has taken that decision, please write that information forward to the colleague who is maintaining the media plan. So Matthias
sir.
just voted for that one, so that we
I
get
knew
that A media plan and B on the calendar. So I guess it's in 2 weeks. So
Yes.
yeah, we don't know where we are going to be, but currently we are still in Germany, but that might change.
Okay.
Good. Then I would say vApp for the run. We have a topic for the next session. Stay tuned as a service provider in the next week or two for a lot of updates. I posted a video this morning. You need to report your CCM by Monday, which is interesting for those countries which have a bank holiday today, because if you don't do that, I have no clue. I think then you're, at least if you want to change your aggregator, you should really need to make sure that you do that by Monday, which only affects the people who are live with us. The other ones will not hear it in time. Otherwise, I think that will be locked in for the next 3 years. So do that now. And I'm pretty sure from what I hear between the lines, we can be expecting that we get now daily news and updates and changes so that all the systems are going to be released. So stay tuned. Subscribe to our newsletters, or actually watch out for my VMware by Broadcom series. That should keep you updated as well, just in case your email inbox isn't showing you whatever is going to. That being said, I would say have a good remainder of the week, a weekend, and we hear you in 2 weeks. Toby,
Thanks for watching.
bye-bye.
Bye.